The Hyundai Santa Cruz has been one of the most popular vehicles in the US market ever since it was first introduced back in 2021. Its countless virtues made it a serious threat to the Blue Oval's little breadwinner, the Ford Maverick. However, as good as the Santa Cruz is, it's not without its faults. So let's expose the biggest pros and cons of the 2024 Hyundai Santa Cruz and check out if the truck is worth your money. Starting with the good stuff. Number 3. An incredibly well-built cabin. Honestly, we're astonished at the build quality of the Santa Cruz, especially when compared to the Maverick. For starters, we simply can't believe that the Santa Cruz is virtually covered in soft-touch materials that neutralize squeaks and rattles. Furthermore, you also get aluminum and chrome accented bits and pieces, which adds a fair bit of character to the car, especially compared to the Maverick's all-plastic layout. It adds an elegant touch to the car and allows a cabin experience to be much more pleasant than the price tag of the Santa Cruz would suggest. We'd like to highlight the seats, as they're leagues in front of the Ford Maverick, both in terms of contouring and quality. Furthermore, the cabin itself is just so much better designed than the Maverick. It's ergonomic, modern, and quite stylish. The large infotainment screen in the middle is what makes the whole package look and feel much more upmarket than the Santa Cruz is, while also adding a new dimension to the interior space. And despite being stylish, the interior remains practical, as Hyundai decided to keep physical buttons and dials, which allows for a much more responsive and direct relationship with the car. Overall, we're pleasantly surprised at how good the interior is, and we love that Hyundai keeps focusing its attention on the little details that oftentimes matter the most. However, this is not the only thing that makes Santa Cruz as popular as it is. Number 2. Exceptional driving characteristics. Ever since it was first introduced, the Hyundai Santa Cruz has been adored by both buyers and critics when it comes to driving dynamics. The general agreement between us all was that the Santa Cruz, despite being a truck, drove like a regular vehicle. Scrap that! It drove better than a regular old boring car. This is because the Santa Cruz rides on the same platform as the critically acclaimed Hyundai Tucson, therefore sharing most of its characteristics. First of all, the steering of the Santa Cruz is sharp and direct, and it allows for a much more precise way of taking on corners more aggressively. The steering is aided by a well-balanced chassis and a generally rigid frame that neutralizes most of the body roll that comes from a tall center of gravity. Furthermore, despite being stiffened up a bit, the car itself isn't exactly uncomfortable. The suspension, albeit firm, does iron out road bumps with relative ease, and the comfortable seats serve as further filtering of road imperfections. Overall, in terms of how it drives, the Santa Cruz manages to offer a better and more complete ride than its rival, which allows it to be a far more interesting choice for those of us who enjoy driving. Speaking of driving enjoyment, number 1, class-leading power plants. We're so glad that Hyundai didn't disappoint in the power plant department, unlike some other car manufacturers. And we're not looking at you, Ford. Instead of offering us a lackluster and gutless engine paired with a CVT gearbox, Hyundai decided to be brave about the beating heart of their compact pickup truck. As a result, the Santa Cruz has only 2 engine options, and neither of them is electrified, nor is it paired with a CVT. Instead, both of these engines have only 2 things in mind: simplicity and potency. The lower trim levels come as standard with a weaker, naturally aspirated 2.5-liter i4. And while that might sound slow and bad, you couldn't be further from the truth, as even as such the engine manages to push out 200 horsepower with ease. It also makes do with an 8-speed automatic gearbox, allowing smooth and elastic gear changes. This makes it quite a good choice if you don't need any kind of excessive power, as the engine will be more than plenty for most. However, if 200 horsepower isn't just enough for you, well, don't worry, as you can get the turbocharged version of this engine, which, believe it or not, achieves power figures that are just shy of 300 horsepower, making it considerably more potent than the Maverick's 2.0 EcoBoost. Furthermore, Unlike its younger brother, their turbocharged 2.5-liter is also paired with an 8-speed DCT, ensuring impeccable gear shifts and a fantastic blend of comfort and sportiness. Plus, the truck will also be able to tow up to 5,000 pounds, which is incredible for such a small truck. Not to mention that, unlike the Maverick, you're not obliged to choose one engine over the other so that you can get AWD, as it is available as an optional extra for both engines. But it's not all fun and games, and for all the good it does, the Santa Cruz has its fair share of gaping flaws. Number 3. Cramped rear seats. Despite being quite comfortable for its class, and despite the cabin feeling way more upmarket than it honestly should, we're appalled at how bad the rear seat room is. Furthermore, the rear seats also seem to be less comfortable than the front ones, which further hampers the rear seating experience. Honestly, if you're looking for a vehicle that will carry more than 4 adults regularly, we wouldn't exactly recommend the Santa Cruz. Sure, you'll be able to drive them around for a short period. However, any prolonged ride will be a hassle. This is especially weird because the Tucson has noticeably more legroom than the Santa Cruz. All in all, while this is annoying, we wouldn't exactly call it a deal breaker. That said, considering that the Santa Cruz is designed as a crew cab only, Hyundai should have tried harder at making the rear seats more usable, or at least make the bed larger. Speaking of the bed, number 2, a disappointingly situational truck bed. Another big gripe of the Hyundai Santa Cruz is its lackluster truck bed, especially when compared to the Maverick. Don't get us wrong, the bed was designed well, and it is usable thanks to the fact that it has been thoughtfully designed with a bunch of enclosed cargo compartments all over it. But unfortunately, its biggest problem is the fact that it's just too short for any real truck work. Coming in at around 4 feet of total length, it goes without saying that you won't be carrying longer items in it. Furthermore, because the Santa Cruz is based in Tucson, the width of the bed is also not great, which leaves the pickup truck's practicality fairly compromised. Overall, the Santa Cruz makes more sense when thought of as a regular car that happens to have a bit of added practicality, rather than a fully fledged compact pickup truck like the Maverick. It's for this reason that we would be willing to overlook this fault. However, we in our right minds cannot do that because of another glaring issue that, in our opinion, is a massive deal breaker. Number 1, a steep price tag. Honestly, all would be good if the Santa Cruz was a bit cheaper than it is, because it is one of the least practical pickup trucks in terms of bed size. You'd expect it to be close to the Maverick when it comes down to the price. However, rather surprisingly, the Santa Cruz starts from around $26,650, which makes it a fair bit more expensive than the base model Maverick. However, the base model isn't even the problem here, as it does come with a fair bit of kit compared to the Maverick. The problem arises from the fact that the mid-range trim levels are very close to the $40,000 mark, with higher trim levels even crossing it without optional extras. And yes, you do get a comfier ride compared to the Maverick, as well as a much better interior and a very peppy engine. But honestly, why wouldn't you just buy a mid-sized pickup truck at this point? The Honda Ridgeline comes to mind first, as like the Santa Cruz, it utilizes a unibody chassis. This makes it equally as interesting to drive, as the car retains the structural rigidity that makes it ideal for on-road performance. However, due to its larger size, the Ridgeline completely neutralizes Santa Cruz's other issues. It offers far better bed utility, as well as a considerably larger and less cramped cabin. The interior quality is also comparable, if not better than the Ridgeline. The catch is that you can get a fairly well-equipped one at under $45,000, making it undoubtedly better value for money than the top-of-the-line Santa Cruz. Honestly, Santa Cruz's pricing is its Achilles heel, as we simply cannot recommend most of the lineup because of the fairly steep MSRP. That said, the base model does come with quite a lot of features and is a very comfortable car considering its size. So if you're looking for a better built alternative to the Maverick and are not worried about the loss of bed practicality, the Santa Cruz SE and SEL might be a good choice for you.